This is the Ink, Pray, Love podcast. We talk all things health, wealth, and community connection. Let's go. Welcome to this episode of the Ink, Pray, Love podcast. We are here at the LightHouse Studios in Bali, the best content creation studio on the island. We also have a great coffee selection, and you got to come try it. If you're in Bali, come check it out. But today, I have one of my good friends, Chantell Fellows. She's a master NLP trainer. She's many, many amazing things, and I'm going to let her explain it all so I don't fuck it up. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
Finally, we made it happen.
Yes.
So tell us what you do and how you're going to improve all of our lives in this one episode. No pressure.
Okay. I'm definitely feeling the pressure. I mean, you know me, I'm very, very passionate about what I do. I really believe in what I do. I've been doing it for a long time now, which definitely makes me feel old. But yeah, I'm really excited to talk about it because it's such an interesting topic and there's so much to cover. But in a nutshell, we can obviously go deeper into whatever you want to talk about in terms of how NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming, and how that can help people not only transform their lives, but get amazing results in their life, break through old thinking patterns or mental patterns that are not helping them get to their next level. It can help people detach from their past and transform and heal any trauma in the nervous system. To fully let go of the past, right? We all have emotional baggage to some capacity. NLP is what I call the emotional baggage healer. But it also gets you results, right? Because it's not only helping you heal your past, it actually helps you create future.
Yeah.
Yes.
I love that.
Yeah.
And I think that there's so many things to touch on there in the NLP realm. I feel like the letting go of the past situation is quite useful for everybody listening, and especially me as well. Like I would love to drop baggage, drop things from the past. I felt like a bit, as we were talking before, we started like falling out of love with the spiritual community or the business of personal development. And I was just like a bit over it. And I was like, I just want to do other things. But I also know that self-work is always going to be a big part of my life.
Yes.
And since I've had such a wild, weird life, it's helpful to share that for people and they get to benefit from that. They're going through, they can resonate, if they're going through something crazy, it's like, well, this guy's had a crazy life too. They can benefit from my weird life. And so it's worth saving and sharing that. But I also need to drop a lot of the things that, can weigh down. What are some of the benefits for NLP for letting go of emotional baggage that's obviously there, blocking creativity, blocking manifestation power and all these things? Tell us what NLP is first of all, what is NLP?
So NLP stands for neuro-linguistic programming. Neuro is basically the neurological makeup of the person. So in NLP, we really focus on a holistic model, not reductionistic. Reductionistic is more of the Western field. So like Western psychotherapy and medicine focuses on reducing people down to a label. So you might have symptoms or experiences and the Western world will say, okay, these are all symptomatic of this label. So we're going to put you into that category, and they diagnose and prescribe medication for that. In the NLP world, we focus on a holistic model, which looks at the individual's model of literally reality. It looks at their mental blueprint, their environments, their health, their behavior, their past, their background, their values is a really big one. We look at someone's value system, their belief systems, and what could be creating their reality. So if someone is struggling with something or having a problem, we go deeper into this individual's model of the world. So NLP really focuses on the person's neurological imprint. That's what the N stands for. Linguistic is how we then communicate it. So in NLP, we believe that words are labels for our experiences. So you and I, even though we both speak English, our vocabulary would be totally different based on how we want to describe what we're thinking. Right? Very different, right? So a swear word, like I was actually talking to a friend about this the other day because the word, am I allowed to swear?
Definitely.
So my friend, she gets very triggered by the word slut, for example.
Okay.
And we had a conversation that does nothing for me. If someone used that word to describe me, I would have absolute neutral response to that. does nothing for me emotionally or energetically.
Yeah.
But that word.
Your friend sounds like a slut.
Yeah.
I just tell her I said that. I'm just kidding.
I'll let her watch the episode.
Go on.
You can tell her yourself.
Sorry. Go on.
But that's the thing, right? Because maybe if that has been something that she's been called throughout her life, it carries a lot of emotional charge, right?
Yeah.
So words are labels for our experiences, and also words mean something to us. Yeah. We give a meaning to language, right?
Definitely.
So what one word can really trigger the shit out of someone might not trigger anyone at all.
Absolutely.
So that's how language plays a really big part in actually our responses to the world.
Yeah.
So language literally shows us the map of someone's model. Basically, that's what we call it, a model. Yeah. So neuro and then linguistic and then the programming is actually our behavior and how we then use our body and our behavior to recreate the thoughts and the language. Reactions, we have a lot of unconscious reactive patterns, coping mechanisms, a lot of addictions, those sorts of things can sit in that sort of programming section. So that's what NLP stands for. It's the neurological processing, the language that we use to describe that, and then our behavior as a result of how we think.
And then reprogramming that. So would you be using, if I know a bit about NLP, but I'm not at all well-versed just from having friends in the field for so long. But I guess the language that we talk to ourselves in really then programs how we respond to the world. But then we're responding to the world around us, and that's where that language really sets in. So like if you call me a Chinese midget, I'd be like, nah, it doesn't land,
Yeah.
If you call me a fat little boy, I'm like, it's like
because that programming.
Yeah, of course. So I get it. And so that's where your friend slut thing comes in. Maybe she, has been called that in high school, and she she got slut shamed.
Yep.
Which is not cool.
And I've got my own words that trigger me as well. Like everyone has their stuff. So that was just a perfect example of a conversation I had the other day where that was a really perfect example of how one specific word can fire off a whole system of neurons and belief systems and then have that person have a physical reaction to that, right? So the programming, you can reprogram all of your thoughts and beliefs if they're not in alignment with what you're trying to create, right? So that's why I love NLP, because if you're trying to move your needle forward, you're trying to move forward, but things like that can keep us attached to the past. So it's about upgrading. This is how I love to explain it as a metaphor. Here we go. If we look at our brain like the hardware, like an iPhone, the iPhone is the hardware. That's like our brain. The EOS update is the software that we update on our phones. That's what NLP is. We're updating the software on the hardware. So we basically upgrade the programming on that specific hardware so that it can help you function in a new way and get you different results in your life.
Okay, I love it. Yeah, that's great. It sounds a lot easier than getting a new phone.
Yeah.
Your new brain. So what do you think would really help say if someone was feeling bitter and cynical with the spiritual community and their spiritual practice?
Well, that's such a
Asking
good
for a
question.
friend.
Yeah. It's actually a really good question. I love that. Also because I've been there, being in the personal development space. I discovered NLP when I was 21 years old and reprogrammed myself. So I've been in this space, in the personal development space, for a long time, and also saw the boom of spirituality happen and, the coaching industry skyrocket, which was awesome. But there's also a lot of fluff and stuff out there that may taint our view on certain things or make people skeptical or a cynic. Is that the word you use?
Yeah, cynical. Yeah.
So the question was, what was the question?
How do I say if I have a bit of, I don't think it'd be a resentment. I feel like it would be, there's definitely some baggage there where I can't go to another cacao ceremony. Like I just can't. I'm fucking over it. And I don't know if that's totally a healthy response. Like I'd like to be open and bright-eyed, bushy-tailed around the situation, but I think maybe I'm just over it. But
so what is it that do you like cacao?
I love cacao. Cacao's great. It's
and
the
what
ceremony
is it about
aspect of like, we're going to call in directions and it's just like, come on, I'm just over it.
Yeah, no, fair enough. So maybe that style isn't suiting you or serving you anymore. Yeah. So how would you rather, if you could envision a new way of drinking cacao, how would that look, sound, or feel for you?
I would say I'd like it I'd like it to be present, but it doesn't need to be a whole song and dance around the situation. Like maybe that's it. I think a better example, more practical, would be I'd like to fall back in love with my spiritual practice.
Oh, okay.
That
Great.
would be more useful for me. And I think for people listening, like, yeah, how do you get excited about your spiritual development again?
Yes. If you feel like you've lost faith or
Yeah.
you've, disconnected a bit from your spiritual self, because spirituality is a very important part of anyone's life, and it doesn't involve wearing a certain type of outfit or going to ceremonies. It could literally, for me, spirituality is getting up in the morning and watching the sunrise, and I meditate with the sun. That's like, that's genuinely just how I connect. So it's different. It's so subjective. So my question for you is, what is spirituality for you? How do you experience your spiritual self?
I feel like it's shifted and changed a lot, but spirituality for me would be the connection I have to myself and the connection I have to the world around me. And does that make me respond in a loving and kind and positive way, like to the world around me? Am I an asset to the world around me? And am I an asset inward? Am I connected to myself? And usually when I'm really connected to my spiritual self, I manifest amazing things really quickly. I'm just happier and more positive. I find my intuition's way stronger. And then if it's fuzzy and I'm not feeling that, then I'm more inclined to addictive patterns and negative spot, like suppression, like Netflix and cinnamon buns and shit like that. Like I'm just way more into the lower level addictive things, rather than if I'm connected to my spiritual self, I feel content watching the sunrise and going for walks, and just like it takes less to satiate me in a sattvic way, in a happy way, and I'm very, very wholesome. Otherwise, I'm just like suppression, distraction.
Yeah, gotcha.
I'm noticing that in my spiritual practice.
Okay, it's so interesting. So you're talking about, even with your hand movements, there's like this lower aspect and this higher aspect of yourself and your experience with your spirituality and you and your life. A few things I want to note in your language. I noticed your values, a lot about your values, which is connection, kindness, feeling valuable, contribution. Would you say these are all things that help you feel connected to
I want to be useful. Like
useful?
That's a big part of that. Is I'd like to be an asset to the world around me. Like that feels good to me. Then I feel like I'm doing something, and I feel like I might have gotten pushed away from my practice a bit because I had kind of a tough go in Vancouver last year, and it didn't end the way I wanted to. And a lot of the circumstances around me didn't end how I wanted them to. And I feel like that pushed me back. I didn't show up how I wanted to. And I got involved in some situations that were like a business breakup that was very stressful. And it was just like, man, that felt like it weighed me down a bit. Like I just feel like and that pushed me away from wanting to really engage in my own practice as well. And I don't know where that little break happened, but I felt like I didn't show up how I wanted to, and the situation didn't show up how I wanted to. And I feel like it put me into a bit of a bit of a spiral, and that was needing to be maybe, what's the word for it? Like numbed. Like I was using a bit of distraction as a way to numb a coping mechanism. Whereas usually my spiritual practice would be what would actually solve the problem, I guess, or actually like satiate this issue, or make things a little bit better.
Totally.
So that's kind of where I feel like where it came from.
Yes. Yeah. So if we were in a coaching session, for example, because I'm hearing a lot of really amazing things in your language, the first thing I'll say is that there are moments in life where we do need to give ourselves grace. We are going to fall, we are going to fail, we're going to feel hurt, rejected, we're going to reject people, abandon people, and we're going to be abandoned. There's a lot of stuff that can create that sort of emotional pain where we do, want to kind of not feel it because it can be uncomfortable. So, grace is a big thing, and if we were in a session, the first question I would ask you is, what did you learn from that experience?
So many things, tons of things. Yeah. Wild amount. I always learn lessons the hard way, and so I learned them the hard way for sure in that situation.
You're an Aries. I just feel like it's just like such an Aries thing.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Run into the wall.
Yeah, I gotta feel the stove is hot and burn my hand and be like, oh, son of a bitch. I learned so much out of that situation, and I feel like, yes, the lessons I integrated, I got them right away. It instantly made me a better person. But the weight of it, I still feel. And I was waking up consistently at like 4 a.m. in the middle of the night with the weight of that. Like I'd get up to pee and I couldn't go back to sleep because the baggage of it would be weighing me down. And one of my good friends, Therese Tierney, she's an amazing intuitive coach. And she was saying, well, that's when your liver meridian and your lung meridians, and your lungs process grief.
It's grief, yeah.
And so I was just holding on to the grief of something not working out the way I wanted it to. And I was like, what the fuck is the point of holding on to the grief? But I couldn't shake it off. And I'd be trying just to work through it. Like, you learned, you move on. But there was something about the grief of the situation, because it meant so much to me, like emotionally. I wanted that to really work out, but multiple things didn't. And the weight of it was waking me up in the middle of the night, and I just couldn't go back to sleep. I'd just be ruminating over it. And only at 4 a.m. It wouldn't really happen throughout the day. It'd come up and I'd be like, yeah, I'm busy, whatever. But those hours was like haunting me for a good 6 months. And what would you say to, for me, obviously this is a coaching session for me now, what for anybody listening, like, how do we drop that baggage using NLP?
Using NLP. So yeah, so your friend's absolutely right. 'Cause the second you said I was waking up between these hours, I was like, okay, that's the lung meridian. That is grief. There's some unprocessed grief. So, the first thing is, I think what happens, the reason that we hold on to emotions in the first place is because we haven't fully processed them or allowed them in some way. Grief especially is such a huge emotion that we're not actually taught how to process. And it's not as deep as we think it is. It's a very uncomfortable emotion, but I feel like grief for me, it's been one of my biggest teachers in life. I actually have a lot of respect for grief. And, something that could be interesting for you to do is, have you had a funeral for that business? Have you actually done like some sort of ceremony around, when we do that, when we die, but when a business dies or when something that creates the grief, that's what grief is, right? It's mourning, it's loss. Could be an idea for you to kind of.
I thought about cremating it while I was back in town.
Yeah. Or you could set some shit on fire.
I really thought about it. I was like,
I'm not advising that.
Don't do that. No, that's bad karma. Don't do that. People could get hurt. Don't be bitter. And that was one big thing I had to keep reminding myself is like, don't be bitter. Like, don't act out of spite and grief, and be the better person in any situation. But then I felt like I was suppressing it. I was internalizing it because I wasn't expressing grief in certain ways. I had to be the better person, and being the better person in those situations felt like I was like not speaking my truth, as they would say. Like I just didn't want to be a reckless person. And what I was saying, I needed to be a ninja in this situation. And it was like eating me up inside. And I feel like that's part of the grief that was unprocessed. So I did a bit of work around like a breath work around it. And I fucking screamed and cried. It's not coming out of my nose. Like I expressed and released, and I did that. But it still wasn't quite quelling the baggage of that situation. And I can feel like that baggage was then eating at me for a little while, and that's not healthy. So as you were saying with grief, how would you reword that? How would you use?
So what I've learned with grief is it's a very physical experience. It's very in the body. And the way that emotions are stacked in the subconscious mind, or how we work with them in terms of levels of frequency and vibration, is anger is always the surface. That's actually, believe it or not, the highest vibrating emotion. That's why it's the first that we resort to. So anger is the first point that tells us either a boundary is being crossed or something. Anger is literally there to tell us where we feel violated. That's what anger is. So when a value or a boundary is being crossed, that's where we can kind of play in that field. But underneath anger, once we clear anger and the emotions from that, it goes anger and then sadness and then fear, hurt, guilt, and then shame. And shame is the lowest vibrating one. So somewhere along the way, we're going to feel other emotions like grief.
Wait, when you say like highest to lowest, because I thought, you always hear like the highest vibration is love and gratitude. So like, what do you mean in your scale of highest?
Well, this is with regards to negative emotions. So when I'm doing a clearing session, for example, or a timeline, I do timeline therapy. So that clears the subconscious negative emotions, right? So that's the baggage that we're talking about. All the baggage that sits in the subconscious, aka the negative or lower vibrating emotions. Anger is the highest vibrating of the negative emotions. That's why it's really powerful. That's why we can, you could probably, if someone was really angry, they could probably punch through a wall, for example, because there's so much force in that energy because it's very powerful.
Yeah.
So
I've never seen shame punch through a wall.
Yeah.
Fair enough. You just don't see that happen.
Shame just wallows.
Fair enough. Yeah. Fair. Crime of shame. You never see crime of passion. You don't see like a crime of shame. It doesn't really happen. Fair enough. All right. Makes sense.
That'd make a good book.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how it works in terms of, like the energy. So when we work with grief, for example, grief is not actually a low vibrating. Grief is actually the opposite of love. Like it's on the same spectrum of love because the deeper that you love, the deeper you're able to feel grief, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they're actually, for me, they go hand in hand. They're kind of a yin and yang emotion. And when I've experienced deep, deep, deep depths of grief, it's because I've realized that I can experience deep, deep, deep depths of love. So grief comes from attachment. When we love something, we attach ourselves to it, whether it's our identity, our emotions, it's an investment, right? When we love something, we're investing.
Mm-hmm.
So grief is actually the loss of that investment and the attachment, and it's a lack of acceptance. That's what grief is. When it's lingering and it's holding on, and then our body will tell us, our body will communicate to us that there is something that we're struggling to process. So it will wake us up. That's your unconscious mind, by the way, waking you up in the middle of the night. It's also, pain, physical pain. As a hypnotherapist, pain is literally in the mind. Pain is there. The body creates pain because it's so hard to ignore. You can't ignore pain. How often have you experienced something physically so painful that you can't think about anything else, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's whether it's a toothache, pain in your back, a slipped disc, whatever it is, it takes up so much of your attention and awareness because that's the point of it. It's to get you to pay attention and say, hey, there's something that you're not processing. The body will heal itself. In NLP, we use metaphysical medicine. And, when we do live demonstrations in our training rooms, there could be people that have chronic back pain and we'll clear it in 5 minutes. And they're like, holy shit, I can walk again.
With words.
Yeah, just with words. Just because, it's usually a process where we get them to move. So if it's a back problem, we'll get them to move until the pain point. Okay. Then we find out what the emotions are. Clear them. And then I can move further. I haven't been able to move this far before. And then we keep clearing and clearing, and then they can do full body bendovers. And
wait, what's the clearing look like? What's that process look like?
So NLP is all about the client healing themselves. Okay. So NLP is the art of asking questions. So we would just literally ask, what are you feeling right now? Like when the pain is right at its peak, what's the emotion? So if you have a pain, whether it's emotional pain, mental pain, physical pain, all you need to do is ask yourself in that moment, what's the emotion that I'm feeling right now? A lot of the time we're ignoring it. We're just focused on the pain. But if you actually stop and go, what's the emotion I'm feeling outside the physical pain or whatever, you'll get your answer pretty quickly. So that's how you can quite quickly just clear it. It's just by acknowledging it. Mm-hmm. And to answer your question about how to clear the baggage, there's 2 communication models that we use. One, when it was interesting before, you were quite literally showing me the lower self, the higher self, and how to communicate to these 2 versions of you, right? Because you're here in the middle, and we've got our higher self, which we access through the unconscious mind. But we've also got the lower self, which we access through the unconscious mind. They're both versions of us. Neither is good or bad. The 2 language models we use, it's called the meta model. We chunk down to speak directly to the lower self and find out what the belief systems are, the baggage is, all that stuff. Then we have the higher chunk, which is a language model that we use to access your higher self and find out what the purpose is, what your higher mission is, what's the purpose of the pain, what's all of this for, what's the greater vision, what's it teaching you, all that kind of stuff. So quite simply by using language, you can access these 2 versions and then bring them together to create a sense of wholeness.
Interesting. I feel like I've done certain practices similar to this, and it also sounds a lot like Vipassana meditation, where you just need to sit with the feeling and inquire and sit and feel and not react, and sit and feel and not react.
Is Vipassana Buddhist?
Yeah.
Yeah. So NLP is very much rooted in Buddhism as well.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Where did it originate?
So it has quite an interesting lineage, I guess you could say. It's a pretty new, like modern type of psychotherapy, which started in the late 70s. Richard Bandler and John Grinder are like the founders, I guess you could say, of NLP. But it's made up of so many different psychologists and, theories and things like that. But that was where it originated, was by those two. So, then there's blends of hypnosis as well, which we've been using since, we used to use hypnosis as a pain. They used to use it in surgery before we had pharmaceuticals. So they would hypnotize you to literally disconnect the feeling from your leg. So they had to cut into your leg.
Wow.
Yeah. So hypnosis, that's like an old school thing that we used to use. We used to actually use mind power a lot more than we do now in certain ways. But that's kind of the history of it. And, it's just been made up of lots of different renowned psychologists and also science backing it too. So, it's super interesting. I love how it's been developed. And then Dr. Tad James created timeline therapy as a branch of NLP, which is incredibly powerful. He sadly passed away a couple of years ago, but I was trained by his wife.
What's timeline therapy like?
So that is accessing – so this is very powerful for letting go of the past. So NLP will help you to rewire. NLP coaching is there to help you discover what's beneath the surface. Like, what is it that's actually holding you back? What are the patterns, behaviors, beliefs that are controlling your identity and controlling your habits and behavior? We can reprogram it with NLP. What hypnosis does is bypass the conscious mind and help you reprogram basically brand new beliefs, which is really awesome. And then timeline therapy helps you access your actual timeline. It works with a system. I don't know if have you ever heard of Gestalt therapy? Yeah. It works with Gestalts, which are essentially little blips in your timeline, whether it's past, like life even. Sometimes some people regress. It's not intended for that, but I've had many clients regress to past lives. I've also had clients, so we do genealogical healing. So timelines run from past lives, family, ancestral, genealogical lines, or from this life. They're the three kind of ways that we make up our experience, like very multidimensional, I guess you could say. So I've had a client regress, we were clearing her timeline because she had issues moving forward. And it's pretty wild what can happen. This just came up, and it's random how it comes up. This just came up in a session because she was in no contact with her mum. And she wanted to work on her relationship, how she was feeling in that situation. So we actually did timeline therapy for her, and she regressed 12 generations back on her mother's side and cleared like all these different emotions. And then we brought her back, and then half an hour, she hadn't spoken to her mum for a few years, and half an hour after a session, she texted me because her mum called her.
Whoa. How did she go back 12 generations? Like that always confuses me when people do like not only past life generation, like going, what do they call it? Past life. What's the word for it? The
genealogical.
No, the past life. Fuck, there's a word for it. When people go back and look at what their past lives are, or if they can go back.
Past life regression.
That's the one. That's what it was, regression. Thank you. But if they're looking back like 12, like who would even know who their great
Absolutely.
How?
Yeah. So I love this question. So this is the magic of NLP and timeline and hypno. So when you work with the unconscious mind, so that was your conscious mind. That's logical. It's thinking. It's strategic. It's trying to understand. That is all the conscious concept. That's one part of our experience. So yes, your conscious mind is going to sit there going, but how? I don't understand, because it wants to understand. The unconscious, however, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't have that structure. It's the feminine part of the mind. The conscious mind's the masculine. The unconscious is the feminine. There is no restrictions. There's no borders, and like I said, it's the link to your higher self. So when you're in a regression or when you're in a trance, and if I asked my client, ask your unconscious mind, when did this start? How many generations ago? If it's genealogical, they'll just say the first number that comes up, 12. It's not that they're thinking, they're not creating that from their conscious concept. Okay, we just trust it. We go back 12 generations. And I love your question around, but how would you even know who your great times 12 grandmother is?
Yeah.
And they don't, I would love to take you through a session one day, because it's not really something that you can describe to the conscious mind. You have to kind of experience it. But, you know, you literally re-experience a memory. So you're actually having an experience where you're in the memory. It's not so much about what they look like, but it's more about the situation or the experience that created the feeling or the emotion or the block. And then we clear it by getting what's called a positive learning. The positive learnings come from a higher perspective on the situation. So we're actually zooming out on it and looking at it from above and going, and because what happens, we have a very foveal understanding of a situation, meaning it's not zoomed out, it's very laser focused in on just one dimension. So that's how timeline therapy works. We zoom out, we look at the bigger picture, we allow the unconscious mind to regress to that time or memory, because if you want to get metaphysical with it, but we are, you know, Dr. Bruce Lipton and Joe Dispenza have proven this with science, is that our DNA is a product of, it's just passed down. Like your thoughts and beliefs are literally replicated through DNA. And then you have an offspring and that's programmed in them. Then they have an offspring. If it's not cleared and restructured and changed, it's just going to keep getting passed down. So that's how genealogical patterns and beliefs can work. And emotions are in water. You know, Dr. Emoto, the water guy, he's proven that we speak to water and it changes the structure. So it's the same with our emotions, that lives in the fluid in our body, which is our cells, which is made up of water. It's just passed down. So there is a bit of science to it, but the way we clear it on a metaphysical level is actually getting the learnings and clearing the charge. That's the electric charge. That's
the charge thing definitely makes sense. And I totally get that, because I did some timeline therapy with like healing the trauma from my accident and then going back to when the accident happened and rewiring and having to be in the emotions of the accident and then rewiring it and seeing it from a different perspective. And it really works. So I totally see that. And I think I've had to do that along with the lines with this last year of looking back at how it went down and then seeing all these amazing blessings that came out of it, because so much awesome shit happened in the last little while as well. So it's like, okay, there was benefits from it, but still subconsciously there's something there that's like, oh, it's heavy. And so for what's like your top advice in just letting go of heavy shit? So
it's usually linked to our identity and what we made that situation mean about us.
Yeah.
Right.
I see that.
Yeah. So that's what it is. The reason that we struggle to let go of it. So that can be part of the ego as well. So, you know, we're made up of our lower self, our wounded self, our ego, our unconscious mind, our higher superconscious. You know, there's never just one version of us. We have evolved aspects of our consciousness and we have devolved, rejected aspects of our consciousness. So you could be a very highly enlightened person, but you still have rejection wounds. You still have aspects of yourself that are not as, we don't just sit in one level of consciousness. We're so multidimensional. So when we notice there's an aspect of ourselves that's struggling, that feels wounded, or it's holding heaviness or baggage, or we're struggling to let go, it's usually because we've made it mean something about us. So in those moments, it's like, well, what is the meaning I've given to this situation? Because it's usually a belief that controls our identity, whether it's I'm a bad person, I'm a failure, I'm, you know, not going to amount to anything, I'm not good enough, you know, or I'm not loved. Like these are very, very common. I'm not worthy, I'm not deserving. These are very common beliefs. I believe that most people's problems come down to a set of around those 5 beliefs. You know, I'm not worthy, I'm not loved, I'm not good enough, I'm a failure, or I'm a bad person is a really common one too. People make a situation mean they're not a good person.
Yeah.
So it's so difficult for you to let go of something if you don't believe you deserve happiness and joy on a subconscious level. It's not like you walk around thinking this every day. You don't, you know, in interactions, you're not thinking I'm a bad person. But subconsciously, it can control how we show up in terms of if you're trying to move forward, there's a belief anchoring you, well, you can't, because if you move forward, then that means that you are good enough. It means that you are successful. It means you're not a failure. It means you're actually everything that you're believing about yourself. It's like the opposite of what you believe. So it's actually finding the belief that's controlling your identity, and then that's what you need to shift and then reprogram into. So for example, if a belief that I'm a failure, I'm a good for nothing failure, whatever it is, then it's like, well, what would you rather believe? And what's the belief that you need to have to become the next version of you? And that's so subjective. That's not for me to decide as a coach. It's actually for you to decide. So what would you believe that you need to believe about yourself to become the next version of Aren, for example? What's like a belief that would just support your future astronomically?
To support it would be that having a more wholesome mindset would bring me into a higher vibrational like state of living. Like if I was able to be a bit more wholesome in certain ways, I feel like that might help. Because sometimes I could get into the space, like the old part of me was like, just burn it down. And this is like, okay, that's not helping, and to be in, I think in a space that I'm closer to my spiritual practice, closer to a version or a connection to God. And when I'm in that space, I'm just a better person and I'm happier. But when I'm staying a little bit away from that, the belief that like, it's just, there's just more distraction I'm letting in. So I think the belief that is the path that works when I know it is, but I'm not doing the thing.
Yeah.
So, there's something in there it's easier to distract or numb than it is to really do the work to stay on point in that.
So is it all right if I ask you, what do you believe is what did you make that mean about you? That experience that you had in Vancouver where you like sort of burn this shit to the ground, but you didn't. And then you've just kind of been left with this feeling ever since then.
Yeah.
What have you made that experience mean about you as a person?
I failed. I thought I was a better coach and entrepreneur than that. And, I thought I was a better person and I would have made that work, but I picked the wrong business partners and it was a bad situation. You can't help everybody. And then also I didn't act in the way that I wanted to. And so it's like, I ultimately felt like I failed. And then out of the situation, it was a very stressful, couple months there. And then I got re-injured. And it's like so funny how the body reacts to stress. And I was going through a high pressure situation when it was all going down, and I re-injured my shoulder, and I was in great shape at the time. I was doing 75 hard. I was in the best shape I had been in a long time. So I felt really good.
Yeah.
I was on phase 2 of 75 hard. So I was like really feeling good and looking good. And then I re-injured my shoulder, tore my supraspinatus, and just like, it just felt like a spiral out of that, and it just felt like I was weakened physically, mentally feeling like I fucked up, and kind of like I wasted a whole year. And that's what it felt like. And it was just like this L that I took. It just felt like I took an L, but I learned so much out of it. And now it obviously brought me to really big blessings out here again, but still
is that lingering? Like,
yeah, I was like, man, I thought I was a better entrepreneur and coach, that I would have been able to make this situation work.
Okay, great. So let's stay with that for a moment, because that's where I feel like this is what's controlling your identity, right? So if you thought you were a better coach and entrepreneur, then what are you, or what aren't you? What are you not?
Yeah, there was something in that, like I wasn't as good as I thought I was. So then it would be something like, and maybe that's my relationship with spirituality now, was like, maybe I felt like I'm bullshit then, because if I wasn't able to make that situation work, what are you preaching? What are you actually doing?
Yeah, for sure. So what do you think the belief is, if you were to ask your unconscious mind to present that for you? Like, what must you believe about yourself to believe that you weren't as good as you thought?
Maybe it just wasn't where I thought I was. So not as good as I thought it was, not as spiritually evolved, or not as mentally evolved, not as good of an entrepreneur. So not good enough.
Okay, boom. That's the one.
Yeah.
So that's the core. So usually, we have like the core belief, and then we have beliefs that support that belief to validate it. right? That's how the mind works. Your mind's just doing its job, because we know that's not true. You're an amazing, we're sitting right here, right now at your content studio on your podcast. Like, we know the facts consciously that you are an amazing entrepreneur, but the subconscious belief that was created as a result of that event, which is totally fine because that's what happens. The core beliefs are not just from childhood. We have failures as adults that create new beliefs, right? So that's why NLP is amazing, because it kind of keeps us from falling into, it just keeps us aligned, because it's okay to fall down and then feel shit about yourself. And we create a new belief, because that is your brain's job to do that. Because what it wants to do is create a belief that's going to make sure that you don't re-experience that pain again. So if you believe I'm not good enough, it's going to stop you from putting yourself out there and potentially doing it again. Right?
Yeah.
So we want to thank your brain for doing an incredible job at that. Then we just say, okay, so thank you, mind, thank you, brain, for creating that belief that has definitely served you. How has that belief served you? How has that protected you or kept you safe? Or how has that belief that I'm not good enough actually served you in positive ways? I wonder.
Positive ways. Let's see. Now I'm much more cautious about who I let into my life. Much more cautious about like the situations I'll put myself in, like risk and where I want to put my energy. How has not good enough benefited? I'm not sure where the benefit on that end would be. Maybe just not taking stupid risks.
It's a strange question, right?
Yeah.
But there is answers there. Like, it sounds like an illogical question.
Yeah.
But that belief has served you in some way in terms of keeping you safe, or so like you mentioned, it's made you be a bit more cautious with like who you're working with or doing business with. What else did you say? How else?
I think just let who I bring into my life. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just more selective.
Yeah.
Did you find that previously, like, how was the belief maybe not benefiting you if you hadn't have had those experiences?
Oh, I don't know. It's a tough one. How had the belief not benefited me if I hadn't had those experiences? How the belief not benefited me? Confidence, I guess. Yeah.
Okay.
In that sense.
So if you were to believe something else, right, now that we've acknowledged, okay, and by the way, that's a collective belief. Like, everyone carries
I think
that.
everybody has these. That's why it's helpful for everybody. I'll go into my shit publicly. I'm happy to.
Yeah, me too.
As long as it helps everybody else that's definitely also dealing with.
Thanks for playing, by the way. I really appreciate you.
Because I think a lot of people would feel like they fucked up some situation and it's sitting with them for a long time, and then it's making them feel less than. And it's like,
totally.
I fucked up, and it hurts, and it
does hurt,
often,
and it's really hard for people to face those parts of themselves.
Well, and it takes a lot to own your share of the things, whereas I could easily just blame this on fucking morons that I was around, but I fucked up too. There's definitely my end of it that it's like, okay, what about me did I bring to the table that I need to heal or look at and work on? But that part sucks to look at. It's like it bursts your own bubble.
Totally.
Your own ego bubble gets burst a little bit. I think my ego got bruised for sure, without a doubt.
Yeah.
And I think there's also a part of that, the not good enough thing, that also why I don't really want to put out much content right now, where I'm like, I'm not really feeling it. Maybe part of it is sick of the whole song and dance. The other part of it is maybe there's confidence there, that I feel like I lost a bit of confidence, that something didn't work out, and I don't feel so big and shiny and want to talk about things right now. I just want to focus on small, simple things at work and build practical things and just do my own thing. Like, I don't really need to be out there as a song and dance. I've seen that correlation in the whole situation as well, that I'd rather be about it than talk about it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what it feels like, because I felt like I was talking about it a lot, and then it didn't work out, and it's like, okay, focus on actually doing things than making a bunch of content around them. I feel like that's been connected there too.
Yeah, totally. And it's so difficult to create from a space of like lack, like when we're feeling that about ourselves. It's like, how can I show up as the best version of me that's inspiring people, and and operating at a level that you want to operate if you're carrying beliefs that you're not good enough to do that, right? So I mean, it's perfectly healthy and normal, and I'm so in awe of you being able to just sit there right now and just go, you know what, I'm going to open that. It's uncomfortable, and look at that, because even though there was an external event that created a belief, which is usually what happens in life, whether it's in childhood, the breakdown of a relationship, the loss of a job, the end of a business, a divorce, whatever it is, people have these experiences that they give a meaning to. It's like when something doesn't work out, I must be either not good enough, a piece of shit, not worthy, I'm not deserving. Like there's so many things that we create as a result. And that's to actually go to those places. And I think the saddest part that a lot of people, where the liberation comes from is realizing, oh, I can't believe I was thinking that about myself. Like that, it's a lot of the time people aren't aware that they are thinking that about themselves. And then, but once there is so much freedom in just facing it, even as uncomfortable, because honestly, I know it's cliche, but you need to like feel it to heal it. I know that that's such a cliche thing to say, but it is the God's honest truth. The only way to release something, the emotional charge, is actually just to feel it. Once you feel it, you can accept it, and then you can go, you know what? Because if you can create the belief, you can uncreate it. You can go, I've decided to believe this about myself, which means I can undecide to believe this about myself. And then you can create a new belief. But you need to get to the core, which is what we did. And then, so now I would ask you, like, what would you rather believe about yourself moving forward?
I'd rather believe that I am valuable to the people around me.
Yeah.
I'm an asset to the community. I make people's lives much better having me in their lives. I'd rather believe that, I'm good at some shit. Like I'm useful, like I'd rather believe that. I'd rather entertain and be feeling that end of things,
And how does that make you feel to like think about those beliefs?
Much better. I think of the charity work we do with Karma House and Conscious Arts and the school that we help. And when I show up there, how good it feels to actually do something tangible to help people. And that feels good. I'm like, okay, I'm physically doing something that's, I can see the benefit that it has in this place. Like that feels good. That's actually like real, and then, so that feels really nice to have consistent long-term benefits to the world around me that isn't just me, and that's like that feels good, and something like that.
And those beliefs are so much more empowering and more helpful and conducive to the future that you want to create.
100%. And then when I get to see my staff, like the team that I employ, probably about 20 Balinese people, and it's nice to be able to be around them and then see them get married and they're having kids and just like their life expanding, and I'm able to be and witness that and see that, like, cool, the businesses I've created help these people have a lifestyle that's good, and they're good people, and happy to see them, like that really matters, and it feels really good.
You just reminded me of something. Do you know about the 6 basic human needs? It's like a Tony Robbins model.
There's like shelter, fucking stuff.
I think that's Maslow's.
okay, that's like the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Yeah. What's the 6 basic human needs?
So the 6 basic human needs are essentially like the model of our values that humans function, or like our needs, right? In terms of, so the one of them is certainty. We need to have certainty in our life. That's having some sense of stability.
Yep.
Or like we need to know what's going to happen tomorrow. It's like there's so much like that we need to have a sense of certainty around to make us feel safe, which for me is very like base chakra stuff. And then we've got uncertainty is actually another need, believe it or not. So we actually need to have
some variety to mix it up.
Exactly, a bit of variety. That's what when we go traveling and we go and do experiences that are a little bit thrilling because there's a bit of uncertainty there. Even with new relationships, right? There's a lot of uncertainty there, exploring something. Sure. So we have certainty, we have uncertainty. Then the next one is significance.
Yep.
Right? So on some level, we want to feel significant. We want to feel valuable. We want to feel like we mean something, that we're contributing to something, that we are something. Right? It's very solar plexus chakra. That one is very identity focused. But then the next one is very heart centered, very heart chakra, and that's growth. Right? Oh, sorry, love and connection is the 4th one. So love and connection is another essential human need.
Self-explanatory. Of course. Yeah.
Right? We thrive with that. If we don't, we become lonely, depressed, isolated. And that can be in any sense, connection with animals, with friends, with spirituality, with nature, purpose, passion, all that stuff. But then you move up and there's another need, which is growth. And then the very top need is contribution. And that's our highest, most enlightened, I guess, need, you could say, is wanting to contribute, to leave a legacy behind. So when we look at like the human needs and what you were just sharing with me then, I was hearing a lot about where you were at, the part of you that felt rejected or that failed, that's the part of you that needs significance. right? But now you're moving into this higher part of you that wants to be valuable and contribute into a higher thing, right? So we move through these all the time as well. But
I feel like that contribution thing has been a big part of my life, for the last 10 years. Like, it was that's one that makes sense. Like, that one is a good one. I know that one is like the cure for depression. That one's like the cure for so many like dysfunctional things in my life, is like, are you doing something that matters? Like, are you helping people? Like, are you actually doing something that matters? Is your life worth it? Because I lived a life with fucking belts and cars and fancy shit. And it's like, like, after you do it a bit and you're like, cool, I like these things still, but that's not all that matters. But are you actually impacting people, and do you matter? And that's the part that I found really actually is super important. But that definitely, my ego took a big hit. I can see that. Like, that's where it was. My ego took a big hit, and I had a much more fragile ego in my mid 20s up to 30. And it's helped. I can make fun of myself. I can be vulnerable at fucking up. I can do it now. I'm like, whatever. Just like if you call me a Chinese midget, I'm like, sure. But the slut thing is
I think the correct term is little people, by the way.
Oriental little people, I guess. But yeah, it's interesting how that whole situation works. So to summarize, reframing what I actually need in my life, and then what I need to tell myself, or what I need to work on the thinking that's going to help me
into the next level.
Yeah,
for sure.
How do you pick the next level?
I mean, so this is the beautiful thing. So it's so difficult for us to even envision what the next level is, because our consciousness is blocked by the other stuff we're believing, right? So there's, I say this a lot in my trainings, is that in order to do the things in life you've never done before, you need to think in a way that you've never thought before. But how do you think something you've never thought before? Right? So that's kind of where we're at. We don't know how to think new thoughts when we're in a very specific level of thinking. So we need to actually build the neurology. You need to actually build the neural pathways. You need to build the neurology. If you want to be a billionaire, you need to build billionaire neurology. You can't be in poverty consciousness if you don't do the work on your actual psychology to build the neurology you need to get to that next level, right? So that's basically, it's like levels, because you break through one level and then there's work to do in that level. Every level, like I said to you earlier before the podcast, with every level there's new devils. So we might break through one level and go, wow, yes, I'm, just entered this new era, and then you're going to have shit show up, So like the amount of times, like that wound will probably come up again for you at some point, the I'm not good enough thing. It's sometimes they recreate themselves in different ways, and we just need to it's like slaying dragons. That's what NLP is. You're just slaying a dragon. Okay, cool. Slayed that dragon. Let's move on to the next one. I also don't like to look at the beliefs as like a negative thing, because I just inherently believe that humans are so beautiful, even with the mess that we create for ourselves. So I don't like to look at, I see a lot of content online, especially in my industry, with other people that talk about the subconscious. But, there's a big trend about self-sabotage and people saying, is your subconscious sabotaging you? And for me, that creates such a separation. It makes it sound like the subconscious is something that has a control over you, or it's harming you in some way, which just isn't true. That's just not, we don't self-sabotage. We unintentionally, your mind is just always trying to keep you safe from doing things and recreating pain that you've experienced. So that's what people perceive as self-sabotage, but it's just actually your mind trying to do its job, right? And stopping you from doing something. Even sometimes it can manifest as a really weird thing. It could, but especially relationships is a big one. That's where I've been working on in my personal life, because I've freaking mastered every other area of my life. I clocked so many levels, and I just neglected my, like on the wheel of life.
Yep.
Like I've got my finances, my business, my friendships, my health, my spirituality, like, all that stuff, my money mindset, all that stuff. I had like clocked all those levels, and I just completely neglected my love life and relationships. The more I learned about astrology and stuff, I actually discovered that I have 3 or 4 Capricorn placements, and they're all linked to my identity, my love life, my emotional fulfillment is all with work,
okay,
in career. So
well, you're a boss, babe, and you have been for a long time. But I totally get it. I don't think anybody has all the wheels fucking dialed.
No, they don't.
You know? I don't
But
think
it's
anybody
funny
does.
because I thought that was an area of my life that I just didn't really need to pay attention to for some reason. And it's actually showed up as one of the most interesting areas for me to explore. And
You
I
don't
love
say.
it. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah,
And it's been so fascinating, you know, as someone I'm so confident when it comes to my job. So this is how beliefs can manifest in multi-dimensional ways. I don't carry beliefs when it comes to my job or my career that I'm not good enough.
Mhm.
I don't have those thoughts
Yeah.
or feelings. And I've done subconscious work. I actually have subconscious blueprints within those areas of my life that I'm good enough, that I'm excellent at what I do. I make impact. I love what I do. I love helping people. I make change. You know, this is my purpose. I carry so many very helpful, empowering beliefs in those areas.
What about relationships?
Oh my gosh, it's been like so fascinating. I have a fear of rejection,
Mhm.
which I don't actually have in other areas of my life.
Totally.
A total fear of rejection.
Yep.
And so I, you know, actually the way in which I was reenacting that, and that was manifesting for me, was just like, because I'm very vulnerable and I love connection. I don't have a fear of commitment and I don't have a fear of vulnerability and depth. But what I would notice if I perceived there was going to be a rejection, I would disappear. I would pull back.
Yeah.
I found that I wasn't capable of having conversations from a place of groundedness to actually talk about it. I just avoid it completely. So, because if you avoid it, it's not real, right?
Yeah, sure.
If it's not there, then it doesn't exist. So that's been really amazing for me to really face and become really conscious of, and that showing up. It was also manifesting for me because the pattern I noticed specifically in romantic relationships was I didn't set boundaries early on. Okay. So like I have really good, healthy boundaries, but specific to relationships, I would have this is all through the work I did, by the way. This is what I discovered. I didn't know any of this. None of this was conscious until I started to work on this area. But I had a 3-strike rule for people. So I had you're innocent till proven guilty mindset. And I would literally just let the guy that I was dating be the most unhinged version of himself. And I saw that as me just being loving, but I was clocking in my head. I was keeping tabs. Red flag. That doesn't sit with me. That's not cool. And I'd have like a 3-strike policy. And the second that got too far to the point where I was either being emotionally damaged or, you know, and then I'd be out. See you later. Without much context. So that wasn't healthy because you need to give, you can't not give people a framework of how you want to be treated.
Sure.
Like it's like a child.
Yeah,
it's like it's literally like children. If you don't give a child any boundaries, they're gonna behave and act in any kind of way. So it's like I was kind of in relationships like that, just not saying from early stages, hey, I'm actually not really cool with this, or like, you know, is it all right if we do this, or can we talk about it this way, and actually find out earlier that maybe it wasn't compatible, rather than just waiting until it got to a point that it was kind of really bad.
Yeah.
And then going, all right, now I need to walk away because this is not good for me. So that's been really enlightening.
Funny thing for relationships, because you want to set boundaries early on, like teach people how to treat you, and have like the fights that you need to have at the start, or like the arguments, or like you need to have them at the start. But
and you need to know how people deal with conflict.
100%.
That is the most important thing.
1000%. Like, do people fight skillfully? Like, arguments will come up, but are you the type to punch holes in the wall? Or are you the type to have a nice conversation? Are you the type to...
How are you going to resolve it together? Like,
exactly. Are you going to send me 1,000 messages freaking out? Or are we going to have like a calm conversation? Or are you going to
send me $1,000 and make my day better?
I've never had that, and it sounds nice.
My ex-boyfriends used to just send me money.
Fucking must be nice. I'd love to be a sugar baby for once. That sounds great. I'm now sugar daddy vibes for years, and I'd like to shift that.
I think money makes women happy.
Money makes me happy too. Yeah. Money makes everybody happy.
Do you want to be sent money during our
fucking yeah.
Send me a Venmo.
My PayPal, everyone is. Yeah, no, that's super funny. I feel like you got to have the fights, but you can't get into the contempt zone. Like, you can't get the fights to callous. Because that's what happened with me is I would get to the point where the fight stressed me out too much, and I'd just be like, I'm too busy for this shit, avoidant. But also, like, there's been the high frequency of fights that you just get calloused to the situation, and then anything they say is annoying after that point. And that's like, it's a fine line, 100%. Because I'd just be like, oh, now what? And I think a lot of people, that's what somebody else told me, that's what kills relationships, is you get into the contempt zone, that you get to the point where you hate each other. And it's really hard to come back from that. So it's
Well,
like,
and it can be irreparable. Like
yeah,
if things
yeah.
are said that really fracture
Oh
or
yeah.
damage a relationship, it
Yeah.
can be very hard to
I
come back from that.
never want to say anything that I have to take back in business, in friendship, in relationships.
Same.
Don't cross that line and say some shit that you don't want to take back. So you have to be skillful in what you say. And I think that really helped, because I learned that in the drug game. Like, it's working with dudes that are like dangerous people. It's like, don't say some
You gotta
shit.
think about what you say.
Be careful with what you say. Like,
Yeah.
say things that matter. Don't promise anything that you can't deliver on. And don't cross that line and say some shit that's going to start a fight, because neither of us need those type of problems. Like, we need to keep things civil. And I found that was always like super important to learn those boundaries. And then that's why I was never the type of guy in like a relationship to be like, you fucking bitch. Like, that was never been that guy. Like, it's just not for me. And I know, because I never would want to take that back. And I would never, like, I'd be upset if like my mom heard I said that to somebody. It's like, don't ever say that shit. Like, it's important. So I think that's one thing for neuro-linguistic programming. How about relationship programming? Don't be a dick.
Yeah, totally.
Don't say things that you would have want to take back later. Like, don't 100%. Just don't go there. Yeah.
I know I have like my processing style in relationships. Like, I need to take space. Sometimes that can really trigger my partners too. If we're in a conflict and I'm like, hey, can we talk about this tomorrow? Because I actually need time to chill out and settle down and process this and talk about it from a clean place. Because if I don't, then I just feel like it's not going to end well if there's a lot of charge. But I also appreciate people that want to deal with conflict there and then while you're in it. But that's where I don't feel comfortable. So I think just everyone has different conflict styles.
Yeah.
And it's really important. But you know, NLP is such a beautiful blueprint. And, you know, having now that this is sort of an area that I'm focusing on within myself, it's been really beautiful to see how I can benefit from the work that I do with others, within myself. And it's been amazing. Like I said, I've used NLP in every area of my life. And now this was just the one area that was kind of uncharted for me with NLP. And it's been amazing. So the beautiful thing, because I launched my academy last year.
All right.
Yeah, my NLP academy. And, you know, I've got 10 or 11 coaches in training at the moment, and they will all specialize in their own area. So NLP is a blueprint it's a framework that you can use. It's a tool to get people results, but you can specialize anywhere. You can be a relationship NLP coach. You could be a business NLP coach. You could be a spiritual NLP coach, you know, helping people through their spiritual blocks. You can be, spiritual trauma is a real thing, by the way. You know, you could be a money NLP coach, helping people with their money mindset and their money beliefs. Like, there's actually, you can niche in any area. And if you stick to the NLP process, people will have breakthroughs in those areas. Something I love about my space, my industry, you can create breakthrough programs. Like, you can get so creative with what you do with it. Like, you could literally get the wheel of life and give someone a breakthrough in every single one of those areas. So there's so much potential in what you can do. The framework works as well. That's what I love about it. And that's why I love teaching it. It isn't something, it's not woo-woo. It's not like, it is definitely rooted in, there is a lot of spiritual principles, but there's a lot of science. And
are you able to explain the framework in a concise way, or is it like a big, huge thing?
Yeah, I sure can. So basically the framework is, it's essentially kind of what we've touched on. There's certain communication models that you use. So language is a big one. So you'd learn language frameworks that quite literally help your clients build new neural pathways. It just shifts them from what they've thought in the past and helping them to think in new ways. So in master level, there's something called quantum linguistics, which is essentially just helping people build brand new, through language patterns, build brand new thinking maps. So the frameworks are very language based, but then there's also techniques, right? So the technique side of it, so in my certification, you've got NLP coaching and then NLP practitioner. The NLP coaching teaches you how to read people, like eye patterns, which the FBI know, and politicians, everyone uses NLP, by the way, that's successful. So we read eye patterns. You know, you can tell when people are tapping into certain parts of their brain. Like when you were telling me your story before about your experience in Vancouver, I saw you going into your visual recall. You were looking up a lot, looking to the left. You're very visual. You know, you're really tapping in. That's how I know that we're accessing a memory visually. So as an NLP coach, it's really about reading the person. You're reading their body language, listening to their language, and then you're using language to help shift their thinking into new and more empowered thinking. So that's the coaching framework. It's all language based, but then we have the technique framework. So that's actually once we discover the beliefs through coaching, then we can do a mind map and actually change that on a subconscious level. So I'll give you an example of that. We experience things all very differently. So is there a food that you love? You could eat it every single day. It's your favorite food on the planet. It's not cinnamon buns, is it?
Oh, I just fucking love that place, Cinnamon.
I can just see in your eyes.
Crack.
I saw 2 cinnamon buns light up in your eyes.
I haven't had a cinnamon bun in a while because I just needed to cut myself off. Because once you have one,
yeah,
you just want it again. It's like cocaine, even though I don't really like cocaine.
It's crack.
But it's like I don't really like crack, but it is a drug. it's a drug. It's like you have one, you want more. But I would say if I could have a sustainable food that I really love is like a well-cooked steak, like a good steak. Then it's like, that's my jam.
Okay. So as you think about that steak, do you have a picture of the steak?
Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it bright or is it dim, the picture that you have?
The steak, the way it's cooked, or you just mean the photo, the quality
image
of the
that you have?
It's bright.
It's bright.
Yeah.
Is it near to you or is it far away?
It's right in front of me.
It's right in front of you.
Yep.
Are you looking at your own eyes or do you see yourself in the picture?
I'm looking at it with my own eyes.
Okay. And is it in color or black and white?
Color.
It's in color.
It's juicy brown. It's cooked Chicago style, crispy outside, medium rare inside.
And are you having any physical response to that? Are you salivating?
I'm salivating. Yeah. I want that steak.
So you just created an entire experience with your mind just then.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And the way you experienced that steak was it was close to you, it was juicy, it even had a texture, it had color, right? You were really experiencing that in real time.
Yeah. Now,
can you think of something that you do not like? It is the most repulsive, putrid thing to you, actually makes you cringe, food-wise.
Oh, food-wise, okay.
You're like, yeah, I could list
so bad with that. Okay, food-wise, what I hate, I'm not a big fan of durian.
Durian.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, the fruit durian.
Yeah. But do you despise it? Like I want something that really, really like you have a really physical response to.
Oh, well, okay. Then it'd have to be like rotten sandwich.
Okay. A rotten sandwich.
Yeah.
And do you have a picture of the rotten sandwich?
Yeah. I remember when I was a kid in elementary school, I forgot a sandwich my mom made me in like a Tupperware container. And I forgot it like somewhere for like months, like 2 months. And then when I opened it, it was all moldy and fucked up. And I was like, oh my God. It's like burned in my head forever.
Exactly. So you have a very significant
I remember it.
response, right? To that. So as you think about that, so you've got a picture of that. Where is the picture? If you could point to it right now in terms of where you are, where's the picture?
It's on the other side. It's what happened was we were like in grade 3 or something like that. And there was a lost and found section, and my old lunch pail was in the lost and found section, and the teacher opened my lunch pail like, oh, this says my name on, whose is this? And then the sandwich was in there, and it had been in the lost and found for a long time. I just lost my lunch pail, but it was there for so long. And the whole class was looking at it. We're all like, ew! And like, they all looked at it together.
Okay, so you have a very vivid memory of that.
Yeah.
But in relation to where you're sitting right now, as you think about the picture of that sandwich, if you could point to it, where is it?
It's across.
It's far away from you?
Yes, it's about 5 meters away.
Okay, great. Is it in color or black and white, that picture?
Dull color.
It's dull.
Yeah.
So it's far away from you. Is it bright or dim?
Dim.
It's dim. And do you see yourself in the picture, or are you looking,
I'm looking
at it
with
through
my
your
eyes?
Okay.
Yep.
Is it in a frame or is it peripheral?
Peripheral.
It's peripheral. Okay. All right. So the way in which you experience something that you do not like, it's far away from you. Do you notice how different that is to the steak photo? The steak is like nice and close. You're like salivating.
It's juicy.
You're having this positive internal experience, right? It's colorful.
Yeah.
The other one was like really far away from you.
Yeah.
You were really more dissociated from it. So that is actually how we experience our beliefs as well. So we experience food. We experience a whole world like that. The things that we don't like, we experience in one certain way, the things we love. So when we're doing a belief change, right, with the NLP techniques, a mind map is literally finding out what is your internal experience of your negative belief. It could be like the moldy sandwich. And that's how you're feeling about yourself. You might be feeling about yourself when you think about, a negative belief like I'm not good enough. like a moldy sandwich, right? It's like we can have that kind of response to ourselves subconsciously. So if we want to change that subconsciously into, well, what would you rather have? That's a more empowering belief that feels good. Then we mind map and we change your internal experience like you would. We'd create a belief that's like, I'm amazing, I'm valuable, I'm confident, I'm the boss, I'm the best, I'm great, I'm, loved and cared for. And then we make you experience that like you did the steak.
Interesting.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's worth a shot. I'm gonna want to try that tonight in my evening kind of settling meditation and give it a shot.
Yeah. So you basically, you can do it on yourself. It's much easier with a practitioner to do it for you. But that's just like a basic example of how you can change your internal experience from something negative to something positive and override. It's like rewriting the program.
If people want to experience that with you, how can they find you and how can they join your academy?
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't do personal coaching anymore, but I'm sure my coaches will be. But I do have an online program, which my signature 6-week breakthrough program will be available for people to jump on and have their own breakthrough. And otherwise, people can join my NLP Academy if they want to be certified and learn about it. I actually, from my experience with NLP, is learning it, you have a breakthrough. So you can get personal coaching, but you actually do all of this work in your training anyway. You're in the training room, you're learning the techniques, you're working with other coaches in training, they're doing the techniques with you. So you actually have your own breakthrough while training. You work on your stuff in the training room.
Amazing.
And the reason I encourage that is because I want to ensure that I'm sending coaches out in the world that have cleared their stuff, that they're operating from a clean place, that they're not, unconsciously projecting their stuff into client sessions. So we really use the training room for people to actually break through and clear and get rid of anything that's holding them back. So I think that's always the best way, is to just actually learn NLP. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for stopping by and jamming with me today.
Yeah,
Long overdue, and having a fun conversation and me getting more vulnerable than I expected on this one. But I hope you guys enjoyed that episode and you got something good out of it. Please follow Chantell on Instagram and we'll put her notes and links in the bio or the whatever you call it, show notes. Thank you very much, guys. Take care. See you on the next episode. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Ink Pray Love podcast. I hope you found it inspiring, entertaining, funny, and also feeling a little bit more present and connected to yourself. Please leave a review and like and subscribe and do all those things. I'd really appreciate that. As well as if you're feeling in a giving mood, this podcast is there for the charities that I love to support. Go to www.arenbaya.com/charity and get some of those good karma points. This podcast is brought to you by LightHouse Studios in Bali, as well as Full Reset Coaching. That is my coaching practice. And if you're looking for help in business, inner game impact, and building your legacy to be something you're proud of, your brand, your business, and how you walk the earth and who you impact, and also having the mindset and the heart set to be able to be happy handling it all, I'm here for you. Just DM me. Let's go. Peace out, homies. I'll see you on the next episode.